More breaking news tonight. This from the Wall Street Journal just came out reporting that one of the president's longtime legal advisors warned him just a few days ago that his lawyer, Michael Cohen, would flip on him if he was faced with criminal charges. Michael Rothfeld of the Wall Street Journal joins us now on the phone with the breaking story. So, Michael, first of all, can you just explain who this advisor of the president is, Jay Goldberg, and what he's advising the president about Michael Cohen?
Sure, Anderson. Jay Goldberg is a seasoned attorney. He's been both a criminal defense lawyer and a prosecutor. He's worked with Donald Trump for many years. He started in the 90s and the 2000s, and he has he's an experienced litigator. He told President Trump in a call Friday morning that if Michael Cohen were charged, well, he basically says, even Sammy the Bull Gravano, mob guys, when they're faced with prison time, they flip. And pretty much anybody that is facing that situation is going to flip. Michael Cohen is certainly not a hardened mafioso, so if he's going to be charged, he's likely to turn on the president, and he's told President Trump to be careful of that.
It's so interesting. I mean, what reason is Goldberg citing to back up his claim that Cohen is so untrustworthy? Because in your article, Goldberg says that Cohen is a 1 on a scale of 1 to 100 on the trustworthy scale. And that's stunning.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously he's speculating based on his own experience and saying that Cohen is a family man. He's primarily been a lawyer and a businessman. He's not clearly the kind of career criminal that Jay Goldberg has witnessed in his lifetime, in his professional legal career. So he's essentially saying, look, a guy like this, from what I've seen, is almost certainly going to flip.
It's interesting because it sort of backs up what Stormy Daniels' attorney, Michael Ivana, has been saying on a lot of television programs, including this one, that Michael Cohen talks a big game. I think he said at one point he would take a bullet for Donald Trump. He would do anything for him. But the bigger somebody talks, the harder they fall. What was the president receptive, do we know, to Goldberg's advice? Did he indicate to Goldberg that he shares his concern?
Well, I mean, President Trump said Michael's very strong, and he has confidence in him. And Cohen, as you said, has been tweeting, "I'm never going to abandon the president." But we know, well, it's been reported that he called Michael Cohen same day as he spoke to Jay Goldberg on Friday. It's not clear the timing of if he got off the phone with Goldberg and then called Cohen after that, because he did speak to Goldberg in the morning. But he did thank him. He didn't give a lot of feedback other than saying, I think Michael's a strong guy. It
would be interesting to know, the timing if he called Cohen after talking to Goldberg. It's important to point out that Goldberg is confirming this on the record. I mean, he talked to your newspaper. I know my colleague Gloria Borger also just talked to him, and she'll join me in a minute. Is there any reason to believe that Goldberg has a pre-existing beef with Cohen that might be influencing what...
No, not at all. No, I mean, he doesn't have any acrimony with him. I think his motivation is to perhaps publicly warn the president. We spoke to him this morning at his apartment on the Upper East Side, and I think he probably wants to make sure that what he's saying is heard loud and clear. If Michael Cohen calls you, if Michael Cohen tries to visit you, just be careful that he's not wearing a recording device. So I think that's his motivation.
Michael Rothfeld, thanks very much. Appreciate it. Fascinating reporting from you tonight. Joining us now are CNN Chief Political Analyst Gloria Borger, CNN Political Director David Chalian, and CNN Political Analyst and New York Times White House Correspondent Julia Hirschfeld Davis. Gloria, I know you called Jay Goldberg as soon as this story broke. Right. You've known him for quite a while. Right. What did he tell you?
Well, he told me the same thing. And, let me give you a little context about Jay Goldberg and Donald Trump. Jay Goldberg negotiated both of Donald Trump's divorces from Marla and from Ivana, so they go back a long way. And the president does call him from time to time. And last Friday morning, he was sort of surprised to get this phone call from the president, and he just flat out went out of his way to say, look, I know you're close to Michael Cohen, but let me just tell you something. This guy is going to end up cooperating with the prosecutors because he said, and I'm going to quote him here, anybody who is facing 30 years never stands up. Without exception, a person facing a prison term cooperates. And he also warned him that he might also wear a wire. And then he also said to the president, do not speak to the special counsel. They can jam you up even if you're telling the truth. And so, the president has, a long-standing relationship with Jay Goldberg, whom I believe is in his mid-80s. And when I asked him, what did the president say to you, he said that he was quiet and that there really wasn't much of a response at all.
I mean, the idea of Michael Cohen possibly wearing a wire when talking with the president, I mean, that is stunning. He did go to have dinner, I think it was at Mar-a-Lago 2 weekends ago, if memory serves me correct.
Sure.
Time is sort of truncated. But was it clear to you if Goldberg is advising the president to even remain in contact with Cohen, or is it to just be, careful and watch what you say?
I think, if it were up to Goldberg, that the president would not have any conversations with Michael Cohen. And by the way, Goldberg knows Michael Cohen a little bit, and he has, made the case to me that, he has nothing against Michael Cohen. But the president has always been his client. Donald Trump has always been his client. He also recommended a lawyer that he thought perhaps should join the president's legal team. He wouldn't tell me who that was, but it's from a large firm. And I think that it's interesting to me, quite honestly, that the president is reaching back to speak with a lawyer that he has known for decades and decades to try and feel him out on this, because he clearly has a comfort level with Jay Goldberg.
David, Michael Cohen has always positioned himself, as I was saying to Michael from the Wall Street Journal a second ago, as the most loyal of all Trump loyalists. He'd take a bullet, he'd do anything. How surprising is it to you that at least one of the president's allies is now very publicly advising him, look, be wary of him, because everybody flips.
Yeah, Anderson, I'm glad you just raised with Gloria that Mar-a-Lago dinner, because one of the things in watching the Cohen-Trump relationship in this period of time is watching for any cracks in it. And so far, we haven't seen any cracks. You're right. Michael Cohen's out there saying, I'll jump off a building for him. Donald Trump is inviting him and embracing him and having dinner with him in public view. Obviously, that was before the raids, but nonetheless, while the swirl of Stormy Daniels and all the questions were still around him. And so you're looking to see, are there going to be any cracks? And now you have an old colleague, lawyer, confidant of Donald Trump's for decades call him up and try to chisel a crack in that relationship. And I think we just have to keep watching here to see if indeed, from the president's side or Cohen's side, we see them participate in any separation.
Julie, I mean, the idea, again, of Michael Cohen wearing a wire in the presence of the president, is that even possible, given that the Secret Service screens people who come in contact with the president?
I mean, I highly doubt it. I think the advice that this old friend of President Trump was trying to get across is you don't know what he's going to do if he's faced with real legal jeopardy and the real threat of a prison term. And I do think it's interesting, Gloria mentioned that, he's calling somebody who he's had a relationship with for many, many years and who isn't currently advising him. I think this speaks to how really nervous the president is, and in some ways feels that he hasn't been well served by his team of lawyers that he has, both in the White House and outside, in all of these matters. He's got the Mueller investigation that he's dealing with now. The potential that this Cohen raid hasn't opened more doors of legal complications for him, and he really is sort of reverting back to the team of people he's had around him for so many decades, because he feels that he's not being protected, and we know that this president feels like he always wants to be insulated in some ways. The problem is there's no way to do that right now. There's so many avenues that this raid has now opened for him, and he's very worried about the consequences of that.
Yeah, Gloria, I mean, the elephant in the room is obviously the prospect of pardons. There was that, the recent Scooter Libby pardon, which could be seen as a possible signal to anyone about thinking about flipping on the president. I guess the question is whether the president is willing to risk the blowback if he were to pardon Michael Cohen. And frankly, I'm not even sure among his supporters there would be any blowback.
I asked Jay Goldberg about whether the question of pardons came up, and he sort of changed the subject. And I'm not sure whether there was a miscommunication or not. It seemed to me like it didn't come up in this particular conversation. I think what you had was an old friend who did Trump's divorces, in which, I might add, Trump did very well. Did his divorces, has been in touch with him, and is friends with his wife also. You know, I was told that the president called, the wife answered, talked with the president for 5 minutes or so. President said, "How am I doing?" She said, she said, "You're doing great." Puts Jay on the phone. They have this conversation, and I think to Julie's point, the president wants to hear from people he feels that they have his best interest at heart because he has known them for decades.
Yeah.
And he thinks Michael Cohen, sorry, Anderson, I was going to say, he thinks Michael Cohen is one of those people. That's a role that Michael Cohen has played. And so that's why the level of concern is so high for the president, because Michael Cohen isn't just really close, Anderson. Michael Cohen, in their entire relationship, is in charge of the weak spots of Donald Trump, in charge of the potential pitfalls. That's what the role of the fixer has been. And so that's why the level of concern gets ratcheted up so
and he's so loyal. I mean, you know, there is no more loyal person to Donald Trump than Michael Cohen, and I believe the president may have said that to Jay Goldberg in one way or another, but you know, he was generally quiet in listening to this advice. But I think it must be hard for the president to hear that, to be honest.
Julie, if Michael Cohen does flip, if that circumstances arises, I mean, it wouldn't just be the president who potentially Michael Cohen has information about. I mean, Michael Cohen has been at the epicenter of an awful lot of conversations and deals and hush agreements, and who knows what else, and who knows what other sorts of activity that he might be able to point a finger at other people about.
Well, that's true, and you know, we heard a little bit about who's on his client list the other day at the hearing, but the point is that you know, the president and his legal team and Cohen and his legal team don't know exactly what the prosecutors now have. And that was part of what was behind this dispute in court the other day. They really need to know what the prosecutors are working with before they know how they can respond. And I think that it sounds like from Gloria's reporting and the Journal's reporting that that was part of this conversation, is they're trying to devise a strategy to figure out what to do about the fact that now these investigators have this trove of documents. So you're right, it could be much broader even than we're imagining now.
Gloria, just finally, do we know who kept Michael Cohen out of the White House, from working in the White House?
That's a really good question. I presume the president did, and the president's family did. Now, I've been told by a source close to Michael Cohen that Michael didn't really want to go in the White House. That he felt he could serve the president better by remaining outside the White House. But then I've been told by other people that, of course, he wanted to go serve in the White House. He's a political person. He's a Democrat, by the way, but that he did want to go in. But you know, so you hear it sort of both ways. But I think the decision was made that it wouldn't be the best thing for the president.
Interesting. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. More